Hey guys, welcome back to today's episode. Now, have you ever felt frustrated with yourself because you keep doing the same thing with money over and over again? Maybe you're consistently undercharging in your business, or avoiding looking at finances, or saving every penny but never actually enjoying money. And despite reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts, obviously this is your favorite one, working on your money mindset, we just can't seem to break the pattern. Well, what if I told you that your biggest money struggle is actually your biggest protection at the same time? Weird, right? That may be the reason that you can't seem to break these sabotaging patterns isn't because you're broken, it's not because you're lazy or not worthy, right? Because there's some part of you that is actually getting exactly what it needs by staying stuck. Does this make sense? Maybe not. So, in today's episode, we're going to be exploring something called secondary gains. This is the hidden benefit that is keeping you repeating the same money patterns over and over again that you want to change. And I know you're listening to this because you want to change it. So I promise you by the end of this episode, you're going to either look like me, a hot, sweaty mess because it's 35 degrees today in the UK, or start to actually look at your money challenges from a totally different lens, from a place of compassion and understanding. And actually, let's start to shift some of these sabotaging behaviors. So, what are secondary gains? Well, let's talk about some of the basics here. So, in psychology, a secondary gain is like, what is the benefit that we are getting from a problem or a behavior? And it's not always the obvious things, right? The secondary gain, it's secondary, right? It's not obvious. It's not the first thing. It's the second thing. It's a secondary gain. So it's often very unconscious. And you might be thinking, well, how is that even beneficial for me to be self-sabotaging, Catherine? Like, how is that even beneficial, right? Every single financial behavior, even the ones that are destructive or self-sabotaging, serve a positive purpose. Trust me on this one, right? Our unconscious mind is always trying to protect you. It's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to meet your needs. It's trying to help you avoid things that are uncomfortable. And sometimes the way that it does this is by repeating and creating these patterns over and over that on the surface look like they're holding you back. But actually, it's trying to keep you safe. It's trying to keep you safe based on old information, old experiences, old beliefs, old fears. This is what we're really getting at here. It's like the biggest fear. Your brain is trying to protect you from this biggest fear. So it's creating almost like, if you imagine this secondary gain is like a sweet. And what your brain is doing is it's wrapping it up to protect it, right? Because underneath all that wrapping is that biggest fear, the biggest fear that I have around money, that it's going to run out, that somebody else is going to take it, that I'm not worthy of having it, that it's not going to be enough. You know, these really deep, old fears. So it creates these patterns that once upon a time did actually protect you. And it might not have been you, it might have been somebody else. Last week, I was talking about borrowed beliefs and how some of these borrowed beliefs that we inherit could also contribute towards how we self-sabotage around money. So if you haven't listened to that one yet, go watch that one. Go listen to that one. Okay. And the challenge is that what may have protected you in the past might not be serving you when you're 43, right? And whenever I think about secondary gains, I think about things in my own experiences. And you know how much I like to share like personal experiences with you to just to, make it like reality that we're not perfect. Like I'm not perfect. We're not perfect around money. And I know for sure there were definitely some patterns around money that were keeping me safe. And one particular one for me actually was I was keeping myself in this pattern of undercharging Because I didn't want to face rejection. I didn't want to face confrontation, right? And so that was my secondary gain of staying in those patterns of undercharging. Okay. And the challenge is that what has protected you in the past may not be protecting you now, right? But sometimes I don't even know what they are, right? So your unconscious mind doesn't know. Like it just knows that this pattern keeps you safe. So we're going to keep doing it. We're just going to keep doing it. Like we can always think of scenarios where we know we want to lose weight, but we just still keep eating the cookies, or we want to lose weight, but we know that alcohol is going to keep us from doing that, And so I don't know why I keep saying, I feel like I'm an Aussie. I'm not, I'm British. I think when I hang around Australians, one of my very good friends is Australian, or I listen to things that are in Australian, in Oz, then I'm like, I seem to pick up the dialect. I think it's like it's a neurodivergent thing, apparently. Anyway, going slightly off topic. So it's not about willpower. It's about what is the benefit of you staying in that pattern? What is the benefit of you staying in this self-sabotaging behavior? Very often it is because it's safe, it's familiar. Okay. So let's just kind of talk about some of the most common secondary gains, particularly around money. So number one is definitely undercharging, not valuing your worth, not valuing yourself. Okay. Really, really big one. And some of you might be thinking, well, what is the gain of undercharging? Well, in my experience, from my own example, it was definitely fear of rejection and fear of confrontation. Like if someone said to me, oh, you're way too expensive, I'd be like, oh God, am I? Like, it just make me feel like they don't respect me, they don't like me, or what a terrible person I am to be charging that amount of money. Okay. Not knowing that actually that's their stuff, right? If someone says to you, you're too expensive, it's because they don't see the value. And that's fine. That's totally fine. Like it's totally fine to just go, I don't value it enough to pay that money. There are some things that I will pay ridiculous amounts of money for because I value them, and some things that I just don't, like clothing, handbags, shoes. Meh. Like I really genuinely couldn't care less if it cost me £10 for a dress or £1,000. I buy it because I like it, it's comfortable, and it ticks all my style and color boxes because I used to be an image consultant. And so that's why I buy. But if I was working with a mentor, I have to really dig deep to pay high ticket for mentors because I have had experiences where it hasn't been valuable. And so I'm like, so, I have to really think about that. Because I don't value it in the same way. Whereas, I don't know, let's say I bought a Thermomix last year. Have you guys ever heard of a Thermomix? I think it was £800 for a Thermomix. At the time, I was like, oh my God, that's so expensive for a kitchen gadget. I hate being in the kitchen. I'd much rather be anywhere else in the world in my house than the kitchen. But my husband was going back to a full-time 9 to 5 job. And I was like, I'm going to need to be cooking more. And I just couldn't face like having to figure out what to cook. Like just the whole thing, right? Just sent me into quite a lot of overwhelm and stress. So I was like, I'm just going to make it easy. And loads of people have been talking about the Thermomix. This is not an ad for the Thermomix, by the way. No sponsorship on this podcast. And I was like, this is valuable for me. £800 if it means I can cook good meals, nutritious meals, not have to worry about it. Like in the app, you can choose your menu and then it will tell you exactly what foods to buy and where in the, like it will categorize it in different aisles for you based on your supermarket and all sorts of really cool stuff, right? So I value that. So going back to the undercharging, if your prices are low, your belief might be, well, more people will say yes. So you get to avoid that really uncomfortable moment when someone might say you're too expensive or try and negotiate with you. Okay. And also, it could also be maintaining this identity as like, you're just the nice girl, the nice man, the nice boy. You get to stay in that comfortable zone because it's just helpful, it's accessible. Like, I want to help everybody. And so I feel like we're outpriced people if we charge more money. And undercharging can prevent you from actually claiming your full power, because if you charge what actually you know it is worth, not what you're worth, but what the service is worth or the product that you're selling, then you kind of have to own, how brilliant you are, wouldn't you? Because you would have to acknowledge and go, actually, this is the price. This is what this is worth. This is what the service is worth. This is what the product's worth. Product-based pricing is much easier when it comes to service, because the service is often fulfilled by you, and so we make it about ourselves. Okay, but it shouldn't be about your self-worth. When people say charge your worth, that is ridiculous. Okay. And this is the secondary gain, for so many of us. It's, well, I don't have to avoid this conflicting conversation. I don't have to, fear of people saying no. And there will be, if you offer a premium level service, there will be people that say, no, I can't afford it, or no, I'm not prepared to pay that. And that can be terrifying for some people. So that's one of the biggest secondary gains that I see, especially in business owners. It can also apply if you're employed and you are trying to negotiate a pay rise, because you might be thinking, well, what if they say no? What if they say no? Then does that mean they're going to think I'm looking for another job? And then maybe they won't have me in the pipeline for this next upgrade or this next job promotion. I definitely remember feeling like that when I was working in the banking sector for like 16 years. So it's relevant in all spaces. And if you don't feel good about asking for pay rises, you likely will undercharge if you decide to go into entrepreneurship or self-employed. So just be mindful of that one. Let's talk about the next one. Chronic saving. Save. Don't want to spend. Like, no, can't afford to do that, right? This actually is a secondary gain, because chronic saving, oversaving, creates this feeling of safety, this feeling of control, so that when you have money in your bank, I feel protected in case anything happens, like against uncertainty. That's one of the brain's biggest fears. It doesn't like uncertainty. But the problem is that it doesn't matter how much money you save, you very likely are constantly still feeling like it's not enough. Not enough is a scarcity mindset. And so never spending means that you might have to make a decision to spend. Well, what if it's the wrong decision? What if it doesn't turn out right? What if it's too much risk? And then that leads into something called buyer's remorse. Or what happens if other people judge me for it? I remember the first time I bought a first class ticket on an airplane. I was going to LA. I knew there were other people who I knew going on the plane who were going to be on the same journey. And I was like, I'm going to join them in first class, thinking, oh my God, like how could I spend, I think it was £1,500 for a first class ticket. The travel time was about 8 or 9 hour flights. And I kept like trying to convince myself, no, it's fine, because that means I can sleep on the way home. It means I'll be in a better mood when I get back. But I genuinely felt really uncomfortable, because I was like, well, £1,500, I could spend that on the house, or that could be a family weekend away. And I had to really like pull in all of my resources. And then someone said to me, well, you're taking a first class seat, which means that you're freeing up an economy seat for somebody who may not be able to afford to do anything else but have an economy seat. And I was like, I am so privileged to be able to even have the option. And even saying it, I was like, oh God, what am I talking about? I feel like I'm this privileged, ridiculous person who's even worrying about how she feels about being in first class. Like, some people can't afford to even be on the plane. And I felt so selfish. How can I feel like this? And so, but it was out of my comfort zone. £1,500 is a lot of money. £1,500 was very likely, a monthly wage for my mum growing up. So there was a lot of guilt around that. And I'm quite impulsive with money, but that particular decision really stopped me in my tracks. Okay. And so oversaving, maybe not being able to do the things that you want to do is a secondary gain. Right? The secondary gain is that it makes me feel safe, I'm in control, and also it plays into like being the responsible one. And I get to be the responsible one because I'm good with money. I don't buy things, I'm not frivolous, I put everybody else first, I plan ahead. All these crazy people are spending all their money and I've got money in the bank. And there can be a sense of like worthiness around that too, or identity wrapped around that as well. And also, if you don't spend, you don't get buyer's remorse. You don't ever get to regret any of your financial decisions. So if you buy things or invest in things, then you can't let anyone down because you don't live up to any expectations. So that's an interesting one. Let's have a look at another secondary gain. Maybe you're the sort of person who just avoids money management altogether. Just don't like looking at your bank account, pass the responsibility to other people, don't have a budget, just it scares you. And there's nothing wrong with that. The secondary gain for this kind of money behavior is actually very, very interesting because, first of all, avoiding money management completely almost maintains this very childlike response. It's like this innocence of, well, I don't have to take responsibility because somebody else will, or it will just sort itself out. So you don't have to face this kind of adulting with money reality to be responsible. And I'm recording this as of end of June 2025, and I recently shared a live coaching demonstration video. It's on the Money Panel YouTube website. Or if you drop me a message on socials, I will send it directly to you. I'll pop it in the show notes as well if you're listening to this. And I did some coaching work with a particular lady, incredible woman. And a lot of her money beliefs were really rooted in childlike behavior, wanting to almost stay in this childlike behavior because then other people can take responsibility. I don't have to get it wrong. Okay. And it can become a secondary gain. It can also be an easy one for people to just kind of excuse having to set goals around money. Well, I can't get started with investing, or I can't do that because I don't know where my money goes, or I don't know how much money I've got available. I can't save for this because my finances are a mess. So the kind of the chaos and ignorance, potentially becomes the reason that we don't have to take risks or we don't have to make decisions. So money avoidance is a really interesting money script, and it does definitely in some situations become the safety zone, becomes the secondary gain. When I've done work around secondary gains for myself, I actually started with using emotional freedom technique, otherwise known as EFT. And I did a lot of clearance work using EFT, tapping in my nervous system, bringing up certain experiences and the benefits of where that was holding me, how it was keeping me small, how it was preventing me from having to face potentially, conflicting discussions or people saying no to me because no just didn't feel safe. And it was a really good eye opener into how that was holding me in that particular financial pattern. And for me, the overspending was my financial past, right? That was the behavior that was comfortable for me. And the secondary gain, often for impulse spending or not having any financial boundaries, is this kind of instant emotional regulation. Spending can, for many people, feel good in the moment. It's that instant instant hit of dopamine, this way of just soothing the nervous system and reducing anxiety and stress or boredom. Or it could become a bit of a money rebel. This came out in this live demonstration coaching video. this kind of rebel side of, well, I know that I should be doing this, but I don't care. Like, 2 fingers up, I'm just going to do this. This real rebel relationship. And overspending can maintain a victim state. So when we talk about identity states, victim, martyr are two very common states of being. The victim is, things happen to me. Like, bad things always happen to me, and staying in victim is safe. And martyr can be like, sorry, Gareth, but we joke about this a lot in my house. We're like, my husband's such a giver, and when he tips into over giving, then he gets resentful and he's like, oh, why am I the only person who's doing this? Like, why has no one asked me if I want any help? And the kids are like, Dad, we asked you 5 minutes ago and you said no. I don't need any help. I'm fine. I'll do it by myself. And we have a bit of a running joke about it. But also, martyrdom can play into money identity a lot. But this particular pattern around overspending can keep us stuck in victim identity, and so you get to be the one that things happen to rather than the one being responsible for things, or you get to be the one that things happen to rather than the one who has to make decisions. And that was a big thing for me. I was like, I don't want to make the decisions. And if I don't have the money because I've just spent it all, I don't have to make the decisions. Not actually realizing I'd already made the decisions by overspending on whatever I'd purchased. But it helped me to avoid making the big financial decisions. Okay. And so it also may help you to avoid planning. And for the neurodivergent brain, for any of you who have ADHD, autism, any neurodivergency, some particular neurodivergency traits just don't like planning ahead. It just doesn't feel safe. And so if we spend everything now, we don't have to think about it later. If you are neurodivergent, I have recorded some very specific videos and podcast episodes on how to manage money with ADHD. So I'll drop those into the links for you as well. So interesting, aren't they? Interesting to observe. Are you self-sabotaging around money because of these secondary gains? So how do we spot them? Well, you might have already spotted these from just listening to this, but also get curious about what you get to avoid when you stay stuck. So when you undercharge, what do you not have to face? Maybe you're not having to face going for VAT registered or pay extra tax. Or when you avoid looking at money, maybe then I don't have to have those scary conversations at home with my partner. Maybe I don't have to make a decision about whether to sell my house or not. So what identity do you get by maintaining this pattern? That's another one. Maybe you are a speaker and your story is how you survived. You're the struggling artist, the person who always looks after everybody. Maybe there's a struggle story there. And so there is a fear unconsciously or consciously that, well, what happens if I don't become that victim anymore? Will I still be able to share that story? It's a really big, 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 big one. And look at how your money patterns serve your relationships. Do they keep you safe from jealousy or judgment from your friends? Do they maintain a dynamic, harmonious relationship with your partner or your family? Sometimes we can stay small financially because it keeps the peace. I'm not earning more than my brother or sister. And what would you have to face if this pattern wasn't there? If you woke up tomorrow morning and this pattern was not there, what would you have to face? If you suddenly started charging what you should be charging, or saving more money, or managing your money like an ace, what would that make possible? Does that possibility feel scary? I had a client once who like when we asked her this question, she was like, oh my God, like if I was so successful, I would be out earning my mentor. And what would that mean for our relationship? I had another client who was very money avoidant. And that was the dynamic in her marriage. Her husband handled all the finances, which made him feel needed and her taken care of. So changing that would mean like a whole different renegotiation, a whole different balance of power in their marriage. And so the key to this really is curiosity, not judgment, curiosity, because these patterns have often been developed for good reasons. They've been trying to protect you. They've been trying to meet very important needs emotionally for you. And so it's just about bringing curiosity. And more often than not, it is doing some deep somatic work, somatic being body work, clearance work through emotional freedom technique. I combine emotional freedom technique with matrix reimprinting, which is two of modalities that I'm qualified in, as well as bringing in some inherited family trauma modalities, as well as a few other things kind of blended in to really understand where is that held in the body. Let's track that back to a previous experience. Let's clear that energy away. And then let's re-imprint it with the good stuff. Re-imprint it with a new conscious choice going forwards. And that's the thing. If you can make your financial future more exciting than the benefit of staying in the gain, the secondary gain, then things will change. I can absolutely reassure you. Then things will change. This is some of the work I do on a one-to-one basis, and I love it because that minute when someone's like, this feels way more motivating than staying in a secondary gain, then you start to create new neural pathways, new small habits and beliefs through the body, re-imprinting it through the body to then start to make that new belief more exciting and more possible without it feeling unsafe. Okay, without it feeling unsafe. So the first step is to just honor what this pattern has done for you. Actually say it out loud to this part of you. You know, thank you, undercharger part of me, for keeping me safe from rejection. Thank you, money avoidance, for protecting me from feeling overwhelmed. And it might sound silly, but there is a part of you that is holding on to this belief. And so in order to create these healthy ways to meet the same needs, but in a different behavior, then we want to be able to practice getting comfortable with rejection, getting comfortable with this sense of responsibility with money, getting comfortable to just be a bit playful and for money not to feel so heavy all the time. You know, the key is to work with the nervous system, not against it. Gradual changes and small steps are much more sustainable. And, you know, if you want to charge more money, for example, you can't just start by doubling your prices. It's, you know, raising your prices incrementally, getting comfortable with that before you make big leaps. And I know some people out there will say, you know, double your prices, triple your prices. And someone will say yes. You know, it's not about that. It's not. It's sometimes about hearing the word no and allowing your nervous system to just feel safe with that. Okay, so some interesting pieces there for you. And from a practical perspective, spend some time just contemplating, journal around some of those questions. What pattern do I keep repeating with money? What do I get to avoid by staying in this pattern? What identity does this pattern allow me to maintain? What would I have to face if this pattern disappeared? Really sit with those questions and then thank those parts of you out loud. Thank those parts of you, and then start to just brainstorm some healthy ways to meet the same needs. If your pattern was giving and that was safe, well, how else could you create safety? If it was giving you approval, well, where else can you find appreciation? If it was helping you avoid responsibility, how can you take on responsibility in a way that feels manageable? Remember, you're not broken for having these patterns. You're not weak, you're not lazy, you're not self-sabotaging. You are completely human, and your mind has been doing its absolute best job to keep you safe with the tools that it had available. And so by understanding these secondary gains, it gives you choice. Instead of feeling like a victim in your own behavior, you can see the intelligence behind why these things have been happening and then find a way forward. So I hope this episode has been interesting and given you a different lens to look at your money challenges, the patterns that have been frustrating, the protection mechanisms, all of the things, okay? And if it's resonated with you, I would love to hear from you. Send me a message on Instagram or drop me an email, hello@catherinemorgan.com. And if you know someone who's been struggling with repetitive money patterns, please share this episode with them. Remember, it's not about the money. It's, really valuing these beliefs and giving yourself compassion through a new lens. So with that, I will see you again on the show next Monday. Take care, guys.